Hi, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, Homo sapiens, Homo spacians, and future Homo spacians. I'm Robert Jacobson, and thank you for joining me today for the Reddit I Am session, Ask Me Anything. I want to thank you all for your questions. A quick note, it looked like we had two threads set up, two different AMA pages. We're trying to see if we can consolidate that. If we can't, we have a batch of questions that started getting submitted yesterday and some that were sent today. So apologize for any confusion that might occur. So let's jump into this. So first, so most of the topic today is around the commercial space industry. And for those maybe who are unfamiliar with me, I'm an active investor and entrepreneur, an advisor in the space sector. I've been working in the area for over a decade. Had worked with the Space Angels Network on their management team. I started a group called the Aerospace and Defense Forum. Participated on venture and angel investment opportunities. Worked closely with a number of companies, and I'm really happy to be speaking to you all today and share with you why I'm excited by this area and see if we can address some of your questions. So let's jump in. So this is today's list, and the thread. I guess it was submitted 3 hours ago or a few hours ago. So first question here is, what's the economic case for permanently inhabiting Mars over and above that of LEO space habitats or lunar outposts? Thank you from Future Space Nutter. Well, I would say as of today, there's probably not the rational economic case for permanently inhabiting Mars. There's a lot of energy going towards the exploration of it, and groups led by SpaceX, led by Elon Musk, are advocating for permanent settlement. I have almost no doubt that that's going to happen, and we will find economic uses on Mars. What it is today, I'm not sure. There's some good papers out there regarding development of intellectual property, and I think Elon has also talked about that. That the idea is that as you're developing IP for going to Mars, the instruments and tools and machines that are going to Mars and the actual things that are being developed on Mars, some of those will potentially have spin-off opportunities and other maybe secondary, maybe licensing opportunities. And I think the big thing that some of these, I think that Elon was trying to talk about is maybe there will be things that will be created and invented on Mars that you couldn't or hadn't done on Earth, and that could be exported back to Earth. We don't know when that will happen, but is it going to happen? I think so, but is it this generation, say the next 20 years? I don't know. But I think these activities can happen in parallel and are happening in parallel with the development of lower Earth orbit. That's that altitude between, that's closer to us, under about 2,000 miles above sea level, lunar outposts, and Mars. I think we can have all of these activities in parallel because they all complement and help each other, and will ultimately, I think, help us as a civilization. Okay, I'm gonna go to the next one from Remember Yikes Pencils. Hopefully I got that right. Remember Yikes Pencils. I'm pretty obsessed about sci-fi shows. Do you ever watch them yourself? I think this show got it right. Well, I don't watch a whole lot of video. I caught a little bit of the couple episodes of the Nat Geo Mars fictionalized series. It was fun, but I didn't finish it. I only got like 2 or 3 into it. I kind of remembered something sort of annoying me about it. No offense to producers. I know that it's difficult. So I'll leave that there, but I did get into The Expanse and really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the character building more than the world that they were sharing, because I don't want to live in a world where in a future where the Earth is completely wrecked even more than it might be now, or that Mars and Earth are at war with each other and the people in the belts are mistreated. That's not the future I envision. I'm all for Team Human, and so I like The Expanse, but I don't want to live in the future of The Expanse. Trying to think of other shows. I know there's a new one on Netflix, but I haven't watched it yet. So I can enjoy science fiction as much as the next person, but I don't. Sometimes I don't even finish a season. I'll watch an episode or two, and then I'm asking for. There's a secondary question about. Is there a place for people outside of engineers and physicists? Certainly. I mean, space. If you just take space is very interdisciplinary area, and if you can take almost any discipline, and there's probably a job, and you say, well, I'm a plumber. Well, somebody has to go fix the plumbing at NASA, SpaceX, or Lockheed Martin. I'm not trying to disparage anyone who's working in that field, but what I am suggesting is that space needs everyone, and the current space sector, the way it is, does employ a wide variety of people, not just, say, engineers and physicists. And I would encourage someone who maybe is thinking about a career change or going into a different industry to look at the space sector. And now it's also a great time because there's many new startups that are open to hiring different types of people with maybe, say, different backgrounds. Next person from CodeCom. Can I get recruited in space startups with a computer science educational background? Absolutely, because yes. If yes, will it pay more than a typical Python or JavaScript 9-to-5 job? It all depends on who's hiring you and their financial resources. So if you're getting hired from, say, large space contractors such as, say, Lockheed Martin, there's probably all sorts of benefits and upside. If you're working for maybe a leaner startup, you might be getting stock options as part of your compensation package. You might even be working more than 9-to-5, but there'll be a lot of other intangible value that you might be able to enjoy and appreciate from that. Let's see. Can we expect to have tourist space travels in the next 10 years? Well, it's already happening. The market is small. We've had, I think it's a little less than a dozen humans go as space participants or private astronauts, if you want to call them, or space tourists to the International Space Station, mostly through the Russians, on Soyuz rockets. But now there's an American program that's going to be happening through a company called Axiom Space, and they're going to be flying human passengers on SpaceX rockets to the International Space Station. So that is expensive. Space tourism already happening, orbital space tourism. And the thing that you're next going to see is probably suborbital. It's been a longer development roadmap. Groups like Virgin Galactic have been working on this for well over a decade, and they're not necessarily in commercial operations yet, but it's probably relatively soon, maybe the next couple of years. And that includes other companies like Blue Origin, which is Jeff Bezos's company. So yeah, I think it's going to happen. It's just it's going to be kind of a slow burn, and it will still even be expensive for the suborbital experiences. But hopefully those prices will rapidly drop. Let's see another one. Ocean Planet FIE. Do you expect to see other companies follow the steps of Virgin, SpaceX, and Blue Origin, increasing the competition in the commercial space race? Well, there's already a number of other companies. Mostly, if you're thinking about launch companies, the ones who are building rockets, there's many more in the small launch. These are building rockets to carry payloads of, say, 200 to 300 pounds. And essentially they would be taking small satellites to orbit. And there's a lot of interest there, and there's dozens of launch companies that are developing a technology around that. One example of a company is called Rocket Lab, which has operations in the United States and New Zealand. Take a quick check here. Let's see. Okay. When will I be able to afford a trip into space? This is what Dr._Morris is asking. Well, Dr. Morris, I don't know. I don't know how much you can afford, what your budget is. If you're talking about sub $250,000, that's not possible yet. I think flights are still going to be, at least initially, around $250,000 US. However, there are ways to potentially experience space on Earth. There's a cool experience, or I guess it's a business called Space VR, and they are mashing up virtual reality and flotation tanks. So they have places. I think they have about 20 locations around the world. I think in Europe and the US, and maybe China. It's called Space VR. They've developed a waterproof virtual reality headset. You go into a bath of water, warm water. It's got several hundred pounds of salt in there, so you're almost floating on the surface. It's enclosed. It's dark. And you'll wear a VR headset. And from that, you will be able to see, I think it's like high definition, real video footage taken from space of the Earth. And you get about a 45-minute experience going around the Earth, and you get to feel almost weightless. And it is said that it is said by a retired astronaut, Nicole Stott, has said that flotation tanks are one of the closest ways to experiencing space. So I'm particularly interested in trying this out, the merging of a virtual reality experience and a flotation tank. Okay, next one on Old Object 1. What are your thoughts on Artemis? That's the US's new lunar program, public program. What do you think about it? Do you think there's an opportunity for a good economy on the moon? Well, I say yes. I think the moon is a place we should have went back. We should have continued to go there and had a base by now. So it's kind of sad that it's like over 40 years later that we're just kind of getting our groove going back there. So the Artemis does a lot more with less. It's partnering. It's allowing the U.S. government to buy from commercial services such as this Human Lander Systems program that I think, and commercial lunar payload services, and the one called Viper, which is the Volatiles Investigating Polar Exploration Rover. That's a mouthful of an acronym. So the idea, essentially, what NASA wants to be able to do is doing more with less, leaning on the commercial and actually in the in situ on the moon, learning to use the resources on the moon so that we can have long-term, if not permanent, in-space infrastructure. And the moon is it's close enough for us to get to relatively, a few days. The resources there could help us reduce the future development costs for places like more exploration and development of Mars. A lot of good reasons to do it. I know I've heard that there has been a little bit of pushback in Congress from some of the maybe status quo, where they're afraid of giving up too much control to newer companies. And could be just the case where you have large contractors that don't want to share, essentially. And there was also discussion about maybe there's too much risk being taken on by these private companies, and said, well, this is all kind of a relatively risky endeavor, and these private companies want to succeed, and they have every intention to do so. And I think these contracts can be made in such a way where they're hope to ensure higher probability of success. So to be able to get to this sort of idea of lunar bases or mining on the moon or just going to have a visit to the moon, we have to be able to successfully do things to and from the moon, getting there, returning safely, delivering payloads, people, prospecting. We have to do all those sorts of activities. So I do hope that Congress will fully fund the CLIPS, the Viper, and the Human Lander program. Let's see here. I'm going to look. Where did I lose my? Oh, okay, no, next one. This one's from Timorous Fawn. Do you think it's even a good idea to start thinking about anything related to space industrialization when the human race can't even fix our own planet? This is a common question. it doesn't seem like our problems on Earth just magically disappear once in space. You are correct. Don't take me the wrong way. This reader or this writer says they want to go to space, see the universe. They do it in a heartbeat. But it freaks me out with so much wrong with people and the planet in current times. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot of challenges in here on Earth, but what we've been doing for decades is space provides countless benefits. The computer that we use, we would not have microprocessors if it wasn't for the space program. There are, I think it's like 2,000 plus documented spinoffs. You can go to NASA spinoff and look for these more specifically. I mean, space just has so many fantastic benefits from here on Earth. But let's take some high level ones where we're having impact today. It could be Earth observation for weather and climate. We've had some fires in some parts of the country, or even snow I think it was in Colorado and Wyoming and places like that just over the few days ago. They had really hot summer-like weather, and then in less than 12 hours had like blizzard conditions. So satellites and space assets are a good way to monitor the planet as it changes. We have Earth resources. We can better use our resources using our satellites. Communications from satellites, which if you get your direct TV and radio and more, and probably over the next few years, you're going to see more internet access from space being made available to areas that don't yet have reliable or any high-speed internet communications access. Anything where you need positioning, navigation, and timing. I mean, think your GPS, which is very invaluable. There's all the inspirational, educational type of stuff from space regarding that's like STEAM education. In the A in STEAM, which has been added over the past few years, is kind of related to a more artistic and creative side of STEAM. Space, also, we just do international cooperation. Right now we've got Russians, Americans, and many other nationalities working together on and off the ground to keep the astronauts and crew on the International Space Station working well together and safe. But there are just so many great benefits in terms, you can basically take any discipline, whether it's health and wellness, like air filtration, water purification, agriculture, and you will find direct connections that were developed from space. So what we find is that by pushing the envelope of our understanding of the universe or of technology related to space, sometimes they're accidental discoveries where we create these spin-offs that can be used here on Earth. Sometimes they're intentional, sometimes unintentional. And plus, when we do invest in space, the money is spent here on Earth. It's not like there is an ATM or bank on space. So the money is spent in local communities. So if you're, maybe there is a contractor working for whoever, building an instrument, they hire real people who have mortgages and car payments and all that type of stuff. So we shouldn't really try to disconnect space like it's in this ivory tower. It's already part of our terrestrial economy. And I assert that many of our still greatest challenges could be solved from space. I'm talking about literally bringing out people from poverty, whether it's using energy from space, developing new vaccines. We have a vaccine being worked on on the space station to help cure salmonella, which still kills a lot of people around the world. So hopefully I got to that one sufficiently, but we'll keep on going. Somebody's asking about, this is Wolf and Wool is asking about COVID-19 and the negative impact. Well, I definitely had heard of some people who got laid off from jobs at space companies. There were a few companies that had some bankruptcies, but I think they might have gone bankrupt or had financial challenges regardless of COVID-19, and that was just kind of maybe a convenient press release to sort of share. So, but the space industry right now has remained fairly resilient because I think many space companies in the United States were deemed as essential workers, and there's still investment money flowing. NASA has not closed. Look, there's kind of ramping up of the United States' Space Force. So, people are taking precautions at their work when they're in close proximity with other humans to help slow the spread of COVID-19. But the industry is actually still making progress. And then another thing this person's asking about investing in space rather than, say, music royalties. Well, these are very different types of investments. It depends on what your music royalties per se. I think maybe you're implying about purchasing maybe music publishing or buying into music publishing. Well, you're essentially trying to estimate on future performance and value. So you would have to probably do your research on that. I think they are different. Let's see. In your business, have you tried to calculate the parameters within the space-based solar power becomes economically viably convenient? Space-based solar power. Okay, so I'll talk about it a little bit, and then I'm actually going to probably bring on one of my business partners and colleagues, Keegan, to share. But let's share about what space solar power is for those who don't know. It's gathering the sun's energy in space and beaming it back to Earth. And there's different ways you can do it, lasers or microwaves. And what the proponents and advocates of space solar power will say is that, there's large amounts of energy from the sun, there's no carbon emissions, and there's already a huge energy market. And those who control space solar power will have, potentially global influence. They could potentially bring out millions, if not billions, of people out of poverty by lower cost energy. Also, there would be some military benefits where you could have remote bases or mining operations, and you could more easily and potentially less expensively getting energy there. But the big challenge has been launch because of the price of launch. But as price of launch continues to drop, it might make this possible. But there's still technical risks. I've heard that I think Northrop Grumman is working on a space solar power project, and the U.S. Air Force has an experiment flying on their X-37, and China is investing in this area. And there's a lot of thought that whoever succeeds first in space solar power could win. I'd love to bring on Keegan Kirkpatrick, business partner and colleague of mine, and Keegan is a aerospace engineer, and he worked in mass and space systems, and he's currently running a additive manufacturing company. And Keegan, what's your thoughts a little on space-based solar power, where we're at today, and does radically bringing down the launch costs change the possibility for space-based solar power?
Well, I think the Air Force's current project on the X-37B shows that they certainly believe that. We've been tracking the progress of projects like Starship for the last year or so. Us and apparently half of YouTube, and that project has reached a point of viability to where I think we can start talking seriously about space-based solar power, at minimum being used as either a government-run utility or possibly even as a crash program instituted by the U.S. military. Historically, groundbreaking technologies like this tend to be pushed out by a national military, not necessarily by a private company. And we've seen that, and if not by a national military, then at least as a large civil engineering project conducted for the purposes of public works. So for my money, space-based solar power is kind of progressing right along the path that you would expect of a technology that would radically transform our world and is going to be viable in the long term. But we are probably at minimum 20 years out from it being something that has a substantive impact on Earth. There might be some pilot projects in the next few years. If I was a betting man, I'd say that the likely business case of space-based solar power for the much more near term, 10, 15 years out, is probably powering other projects going on in space. The advantage of that being you don't have the loss problems of beaming power down to Earth. You're able to you're not having to go through an atmosphere. You're able to have something that is very marketable to companies that are probably trying to reduce the number of systems that they have to be responsible for. I think this could be a big deal for establishing early moon bases. There's a lot of interesting applications for that. And as for how viable it is, I actually crunched the numbers on this not too long ago, based on some information that we've gotten from some other research that's already been done on this, and some conversations we've had with the experts in the field. Peter Garrettson from the Air Force, or I guess Space Force now, was a big help on this. And the big takeaway that we got is that you lose around 15% of the energy that you're beaming back to Earth if you use microwaves, if you use lasers, whatever. But space-based solar power is 5 to 25 times greater than what you would receive on Earth in the first place. So the negative side effects are almost negligible. So right now, at the edge of space, that shakes out to around a little over 1,300 watts per meter squared of energy on a standard solar panel. So just going down the process of figuring, okay, average weight of a solar panel that's meter by a meter, how many of these you need to generate X amount of power. But what I ended up coming up with was that if you were trying to launch enough solar panels in space to power just the United States, just for the panels, if you were doing it on the space shuttle, it would cost about $76 trillion. It's about 4 times the GDP of the U.S. If you did it on Starship, which is looking to be about between $9 and $20 a kilogram or something like that, that shakes out to being closer to $72 billion, which is less than the U.S. spends on its national transportation budget every year. So the basic barrier to entry, which is launch costs, is falling away. The barrier to entry that is left is efficient and safe transfer of the power back to Earth. Because the problem that we haven't been able to solve yet has been how to reduce the size of the receiver dishes. I think Colonel Garrettson mentioned that they'd have to be on the order of like a kilometer or more in diameter on the Earth's surface. Now that's not out of the question. We have solar fields that are that big, but the whole use case for space-based solar is kind of more about being able to beam, a lot of energy anywhere you need it at any given time. And so that scalability problem is going to be something that they're going to have to work on a little bit more. But again, I think that with the military's commitment being made pretty clear, it is not a technology that we're going to be waiting around for the next century. It's something that we're probably going to start seeing crop up in a few early use cases in the next 10, 15 years, and then maybe on a much larger scale next 20 to 30. So that's my 2 cents on that.
Thank you, Keegan. I've got something I want to ask you that maybe to intertwine with this is that I was speaking to one of these strong space solar power advocates, Howard Bloom, the other day. I think we have our talk now on YouTube. He's a pretty well-known author and a strong space advocate, and he's on the board of governors of National Space Society. He did talk to Elon years ago, I think several times, and Elon ultimately said he was not interested in space-based solar power. I did not hear the really answer why, and Howard has continued, pushing on that subject with others. And Howard thinks that this could be something that Jeff Bezos could champion, that would be helpful to the Earth, helpful to space. He could essentially would be a application and infrastructure play that could sit on top of the use of Blue Origin. But I've heard no mention of from Jeff Bezos about that subject. And there's also some controversy, or just not a lot known, is what is going on with the New Glenn, which is Bezos's large orbital rocket that is allegedly making a debut in the next couple of years. But there's a lot of things we still don't know about it. Could you see someone like Bezos taking space-based solar power to use to power Amazon and other things?
No, not inside of the next 10 years. I think that if anyone works on space-based solar power from a commercial perspective in any way, it's going to be to power other projects going on in space. I don't really fault Elon or Bezos for not really looking into this, from a business perspective. I mean, say what you will about, it might be good marketing for whatever their PR is from one day to the next for them to do something that would really benefit humanity. But from a purely business case, Elon Musk has, kind of had to bat these questions away quite a bit whenever talking about Starship, and especially when concerning Mars colonization, because while his personal goal is to go to Mars, SpaceX's business goal is just to be a launch provider. They have not, asking them to, are you guys going to crack space-based solar power is about as reasonable as asking Boeing if they're working on that, or General Motors or something. Because it's a big step away from what their core business is. So no, I don't think Bezos is going to, at least not for the sake of Blue Origin, work on space-based solar power. It's possible that he might get in early on any company that is trying to make a play of it in space, but that's about as far as I can see them going right now.
Great, thanks, Keegan. We're going to move on to a couple other questions, and I think some pretty quick ones. Are you planning an audio version of the book? Yes, my narrator is almost done with it. We'll probably wrap it up. It'll probably be out mid-October, maybe a little later. Her name's Dana Day, fantastic narrator. And I'm very fortunate for my buddy Jason, who I knew from my early days with Space Frontier Foundation. Jason introduced me to Dana, and she's doing the narration of the book, or the primary narration. And then let's just see here from Did You ever get upset that you'll never witness all the cool tech advances being upon? Oh, actually, I skipped one. So let me go back to one before. There's somebody said, I can't look at pictures of planets. They make me physically unwell. What do the surfaces of the planets in the solar system look like? Well, the rocky planets are kind of rocky. Like you can go on Google Images and see some photos from when we went to Venus. Got lots of photos on Mars, which there's parts of the Southwest remind me of Mars. The gas giants. Their moons. There's a lot of photographs just readily available online on the web. There's great short video called The Wanderers, and it's got narration by Carl Sagan. It was put together by a computer effects guy, and he took some real photographs and videos from space, and he did some enhancements. And it's just a really beautiful, inspiring video. I recommend going and checking out that. It's less than 10 minutes. It's a lot of fun. And then somebody said, the user is, the Reddit person is, did you ever get upset that you'll never witness all the cool advances that'll be built upon the foundation of today's technology? I mean, every once in a while I think about like what will happen when I'm long gone, but I don't spend too much time thinking about that. But yeah, we are at the precipice of something awesome. It's actually been slowly happening, and it's now just gaining a lot more momentum. But I think we all might be pleasantly surprised that some of the outcomes are going to start happening a lot faster than we realize. And then this last one, is this the Krusty Krab? No, this is not a restaurant. I think SpongeBob SquarePants is a cool show. And a cool franchise, but the only cooking I do is for my own family and some friends. So let's see here. We're going to move over to the Reddit from yesterday. And someone said, and I'll probably bring Keegan to join in for this next one too, but how far are we from real life space industrialization? This is from Live Sanely. And I think, the first thing is, what is your definition of industrialization? So, according to I just looked on the dictionary here, dictionary definition is the large-scale introduction of manufacturing, advanced technical enterprises, and other productive economic activity into an area, society, country, etc. Well, some of these activities are in fact happening in lower Earth orbit. Large scale, no. So maybe by that definition, not happening yet, but there are lots of emergent and nascent activities happening. Hey, Keegan, you want to jump in here on the sort of the timing of how far are we from sort of real life space industrialization? I think what they're talking about is just maybe things done in a large scale sort of way.
Well, this is a question that anybody in the industry worth his salt has been trying to figure out a way to answer for a while now, because the answer, the prize for answering that question is making a lot of money. But right now, I don't think anybody could begin to estimate that, because we're currently living in a period in this industry where technological advancements, particularly for launch, are happening at such a fast rate that it's very difficult for anybody to really try to read the tea leaves and figure out, when the tipping point is going to come. If I was when you think about it, to achieve large scale industrialization, you need to have, if not resource independence, that's the ability to, get any resources you need relatively locally. You need to have supply chains to be able to bring any resources you need to carry out industrial operations at scale, either from the Earth, the Moon, or asteroids. Well, those supply chains don't exist. And even with Starship, even with Elon's, ambitious production rates, probably won't exist in any real form for another, optimistically, 5 years. And I mean really optimistically, probably close to 10. And even with that, those first missions are going to be primarily about setting up outposts just to be able to conduct basic research and see if it's even worth going after. Now, there will be a tipping point. Industrialization is one of those topics. If you really read about it, it is kind of fascinating how fast humans will actually do it once they figure out that they can. One of my favorite examples of this is if you look at the history of Japan during the first contact with Admiral Perry, when Westerners first showed up in Japan, there was no industrialization of any kind. And why would there be? They weren't connected to this broader European American colonial infrastructure. But within half a century, they beat one of the largest navies on the planet and were well on their way to being one of the most dynamic industrial economies the world has ever seen. That story is not really unique in the history of humanity. So I think that it's going to take us at least a decade to build out the supply chains to be able to make it even possible to industrialize. At that point, it'll start to happen much, much faster. It'll be like going from, like zero where we're at right now to 5%, very, very, very low level, production of low volume, high cost goods, like 95% in the space of like a few years after that point. So that's kind of my bet on that.
Thanks, Keegan. Yeah. We're going to move on to the next one from Talking Back Again, posted yesterday. How's the average working stiff ever to make a buck from space exploration or exploitation? Well, there are public stocks. There's Virgin Galactic. Is traded under, I don't remember the ticker signal of the holding company, but you can buy and sell stocks there. There are ETFs. There's one called UFO. I think there might even be a couple others, but essentially they're aggregating other publicly traded aerospace companies. Excuse me. You can buy their stock. So an ETF is almost like a little tiny mutual fund. So you can, buy a share, and that share owns a bunch of different companies. And you can hold on to that, buy and sell it, trade it. There's also ways to you can start your own space-related company. If you say, hey, I'm just an average stiff, what am I working on? Well, you can do things digitally. There's all sorts of creative ways to do things that don't necessarily rely purely on hardware. If that interests you, You can take a job for a space company and just make a career transition that way. There are now more angel investment opportunities where you can invest for a lot less money. And there's even ways that I think slowly non-accredited investors are being able to get involved. This is a company, I'm not invested in it, but I do know some principles with it. They're trying to bring Wi-Fi networks to space, and they're running a crowd equity platform, or they're using a crowd equity platform to raise money. I think you can invest in as little as $100 into their company. They're called Solstar Space, and they have a campaign going on right now. They sent up a Wi-Fi hub on a Blue Origin vehicle and sent a tweet back. But again, I'm not advocating or pushing any specific investment, and one should always speak to their tax and legal advisors regarding any investment choices regarding that sort of risk. Had to give that disclosure. I'm just speaking for myself and from my experience and sharing some stories. Let's see. Let's go to. Let's continue. I keep scrolling down. I'm okay. This is from Megachimp. I'm 45. Well, I'll be able to go to space in my lifetime. Well, I certainly hope so. I mean, if you're relatively fit, you could probably go right now. It's just like you got to find someone who's going to take you, whether they're going to take you for gratis or you're going to pay. So, there's ways to go. And there's a great group. It's a charitable organization, a nonprofit called Space for Humanity. Really awesome organization started by my friend Dylan Taylor. And Space for Humanity is starting a citizen astronaut space program where anyone on the planet will be able to apply for potentially a free opportunity to go to space. And I think the applications start in 2021. You would have to look, but it's Space for Humanity. I think it's spaceforhumanity.org. Have to double check that. But yeah, I think you'll be able to go. It just depends on how badly you want to go and how and for how long and those sorts of considerations. I thought it was a funny comment. Well, somebody said, go Power Ranger about now we will have physically suboptimal individuals whose fitness is their wallet. That could be true. I actually did some astronaut training for suborbital flight, and the G's that I had to experience were not that difficult. And if you're completely out of shape, I think maybe in a few weeks, you could get there. It wasn't that bad, or that difficult, I should say. Let's see. Do you believe this is from Sick Whale. Maybe Keegan will probably have I'm sure he'll have some commentary on this too. Do you believe asteroid mining will be a profitable industry within our lifetime? Well, I don't know how old you are, but I would say I think we'll see the genesis of it while I am alive. I would certainly hope that it actually starts to happen in a sort of repeatable and effective way. I think they'll probably be taking the resources to use in space first, not necessarily bringing them back to Earth. But profitable, I guess that's TBD. There's lots of industries that kind of started relatively unprofitably, so I would say maybe. Hopefully I'm giving some satisfaction to the answer there. And Keegan, I'm sure Keegan's got a strong opinion on it. Keegan, do you think asteroid mining is going to happen within our lifetime?
Almost certainly, yeah. I'd say that you pretty much hit the nail on the head, though, that the profit-generating aspect of it will be carried out between companies in space. The most valuable thing you could get off of an asteroid, right now when Starship's flying, doesn't really matter, is water ice and really liquid oxygen. Musk was actually talking about this on that panel he was on just the other day, and he was mentioning how most of what Starship is carrying in terms of fuel or the refueling systems or any spacecraft is liquid oxygen, about 78% to 22% for their propellant. So that's a lot of mass that is being brought up there. And I think Starship is probably going to enable asteroid mining for water ice more than anything else because of that need. A big thing about that spacecraft is its system for using in-space refueling, hypothetically, if that does indeed work. So I could very easily see in-space servicing companies trying to take advantage of that to harvest liquid oxygen at first for topping off the tanks of a handful of satellites that need those systems. What's going to be interesting to watch is most satellites that have an onboard propulsion system tend to use non-liquid oxygen dependent propulsion systems. They either are electrically fueled or have some kind of hypergolic mixture of some kind. And that means they tend to have a lot of really weird exotic propellants on them. Whereas, SpaceX and anything that's usually got a human on it or is going way out into the system on a chemical booster uses liquid oxygen as its oxidizer. So what I think might be kind of weird watching this is that asteroid mining will end up being this kind of very, very niche use case for at least the first few years of its life to refuel a handful of spacecraft and human-rigged systems. What might be interesting to watch about all this, the thing I've been wondering more and more about, is if SpaceX can achieve the scale of launches that Starship, promises, we might see a weird situation where the industry switches over to a standard, fuel mixture, going from RP1 and LOX hydrogen mixes and different hypergolic, concoctions all to an all methane all the time kind of scenario. And if that's the case, then it's not a lot of methane out of the solar system that we can really pull from. There's, you might see a scenario where asteroid mining would be used, primarily for resupplying oxygen stores on orbital depots, and then the tanker variant of Starship might end up carrying almost exclusively methane to top off the tanks of those stations in orbit. So I got a little bit off tangent, but it's interesting to think about how economies that are still entirely theoretical might not end up looking anything like how we think they're going to look like. If you're talking about space mining for getting raw materials off of them, I think that'll happen, but I also think that it's going to be mostly used for the supply chains going on in space, sending silicon and other rare earth elements to automated manufacturing stations that are making, products that might also never actually set foot on Earth. The space industrial boom might be very localized to space itself for at least the first decade and change of its life. So anyway, that got a little off topic there, Robert, but I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, it certainly did. Thanks, Keegan. Someone else was asking about, I think they were asking about liability issues. This is from let's just sort of see here. Let me find from Treebog, Tree Bog, Treebog. Can the companies get sued if something goes wrong and people die? Do the passengers have to sign their rights away? So I think for civilian passengers, I think the FAA is not allowed. They're not calling them space tourists. They've changed the terminology to, I think it's space flight participants. And I think there are all sorts of waivers that companies are asking passengers to sign. And I think that some of these companies are lobbying certain states to essentially get, I guess it's indemnification and sort of reducing their potential exposure. If something happens and something falls on someone, anyone can always sue. I mean, even if something, maybe the passenger was killed or injured and signed the rights away, the family can still probably sue. What the passenger signed and how and whether the lawsuit goes through, that's a different question, and it's not my expertise. But there's a lot of commentary around it. You can find, I think, Space Safety magazine had some articles, old articles, and there's a lot of papers regarding analysis and policy. And there's definitely some regulation regarding this area that I think the FAA has commentary on, if not full-on regulation on. And Keegan, when you're at Maston, did you have much insights on the policy side?
Not at all. When I was at Maston, I was primarily a wrench turner, and I helped out with the day-to-day operations and getting vehicles qualified and carrying out launches, but I had nothing to do with the administrative and insurance policy side of that. That was above my pay grade when I was there.
Okay, got it. Let's go to one. Which space startups, excluding SpaceX, excite you the most? Well, there's a few. Somebody mentioned one that I would have said regardless, called nanoracks. This was the question was from Paswan 2. Hopefully I got that pronunciation correct. And Zepwa wrote nanoracks. And I'm like, nanoracks is really cool. Relativity, cool company. Astrobotic, cool company. I'm on the crew with Arc Mission Foundation, which is helping back up Earth civilization. We've had several flights to space, including on the first Falcon Heavy flight. And we flew our first lunar library on with SpaceX on the Bereshit, which was the Israelis, the Space IL mission that crash landed on the moon, had a hard landing. But we think our library is actually there intact. And we're going to be flying in 2021 with Astrobotic, which is also a lunar company. They're doing some cool stuff. Other companies I really like that are doing intriguing work is Axiom Space, which is developing private space habitats. Bigelow used to really excite me, but I think the air's been a little bit deflated there, so to speak, pun intended. They were building inflatable habitats. I'm really excited by what's going on in the potential for manufacturing and life sciences development on orbit. Particularly, there's a company out of Israel called Space Pharma that's doing good work. Space Tango out of Kentucky that's also doing interesting work in this, called the potential biology life science development area in space. I think Relativity is cool what they're doing, building a rocket with from nose to tail on the top to bottom using additive manufacturing. I think what we're going to be seeing eventually with additive manufacturing in space will be useful. But a company I like, and I'm very biased because I'm invested in it, and actually Keegan runs it, is RedWorks, and they've taking additive manufacturing that they originally designing and developing for Mars, but they're using it for Earth situations. And I'll let Keegan, what companies really excite you? And sorry for the little bit of a shameless plug there about RedWorks.
Well, I'll do a double shameless plug because we're partners with them we've been partners with them on a couple of projects here and there over the last few years. But Made in Space, they really excite us. I think what they're doing is probably one of the more gutsier projects that's currently going on in the space sector. There's a company called Momentous that is doing some fascinating work within space propulsion. They've developed a new type of electrical propulsion system that is being used on a concept called a space tug, which is basically a spacecraft that's designed to move other spacecraft either to higher orbits or to save other spacecraft that might, be falling a little too close to the Earth's atmosphere. And their propulsion system is electric, but its chemical element is not xenon gas. It's not radon or any other, potentially volatile material. It's water. So they're doing some absolutely fascinating work. There's Orbit Fab, which is founded by a friend of ours, named Dan Faber, who they're the first ones who are making a real serious go of it for in-orbit refueling. And it's a fascinatingly simple approach, too. It's one that when I saw him pitch it, I was a little bit insulted that I didn't think of it first. Because the basic idea was to use the same concept of nanosatellites for being able to rapidly build up and scale up in-orbit refueling systems for the satellites that are already there. He's not trying to build it for a manned vehicle that doesn't exist yet. He's trying to build it to service the market that already exists, and that's really impressive work. There's also some friends of the team that we have by the name of Cubos. They're doing work with trying to standardize the operating systems of satellites, something that most people in and out of the industry never even thought of as something that had to be taken care of. They've built a really impressive platform on all that. So there's a lot of companies that are kind of in the everybody's kind of excited about them, but there's always, folks out there in the sidelines doing really important work that not a lot of folks are paying too much attention to. And you really got to learn in this industry to kick over every rock. So those are the companies that kind of excite me.
Awesome. Yeah. See, it seems like, different people have their own sort of flavor of preferences of what they like and what resonates with them. And I would encourage people to maybe check out some of those companies to learn more. Let's go to this one. I got a lot of points. It's sort of a little bit, I guess it's personal. I have no problem answering this. This is from PM Me Your Body Girl. Well, I'm not a girl, and I don't really talk that way, but that's your handle. Cool. So they put in this big box about the different pronouns that were used. Well, AMA, everything is I am a. So when they set it up, they used hi and he. It's a little awkward. They should change that. And basically saying authorship is a form of entrepreneurship. Well, I just sort of look at all of life as a big creative endeavor, and I create all sorts of things from, I've been a musician and create things. I wrote a book, working on companies, working for companies, consulting. I just look at all of life as just a part of a big creative endeavor, and some things go better than others. I've had failures. I fail sometimes every day, and it's about learning. Where I went back, what I did later in life is actually went back to did some schooling specifically around space, because I wanted to plug up holes as I wanted to increase my sort of space IQ. And I felt fortunate that I was able to start understanding what was a nascent industry, and to really recognize that space is really, really a big interdisciplinary sector. And although I can say I'm more of a generalist, I am by no means going to be able to go head to head with a guy like Keegan, who is on the line here. In terms of, Keegan could actually go and bolt together and build a rocket. I'm not the guy to do that. I build model rockets and things of that way, but that's not been my focus. And so I have all sorts of respect for people like Keegan, who he worked in Mojave for Maston, doing hardcore, building. So there's lots of different ways to build things, and I think the part of the thing I'm trying to engender with what I've been advocating more recently is that as this industry is growing and developing, we need all types of people. And this is a big, diversity in all of its different meanings. So if someone thinks I'm like keyword loading, this type of thing, I'd be like, no way, I'm not. I actually do firmly believe that space does have the answers to some of our global challenges, whether it's around climate change and pollution. I kind of share, I think it's a vision similar to Jeff Bezos. It's an O'Neillian vision, seeing billions of people in the solar system. This is something the Professor Jerry O'Neill was thinking about with his book, The High Frontier. He was a Princeton professor who influenced many people in this area. And he basically thought about and designed these in-space, free space cities in space that would have artificial gravity, so you could have hundreds, then thousands, then millions, if not more people living in space. And that's sort of the vision that I have, so that we can preserve the Earth, keep it green. We can still have a few billion people here on the planet. I'm getting on a little tangent here, but essentially, preserving our Earth, keeping it green, using space in smart, sustainable ways to help us here on Earth and push out, expand further. Something I came across was there's a paper by a group of researchers. One is Martin Elvis, or Elvis Martin, excuse me, or Marvis Elton, and apologize, I'm having a brain fart. But their research basically said, look, we need to set aside a good portion of the solar system as wilderness. That means we don't touch it. But there will still be plenty for us for many hundreds of years to do resource development there. So Keegan, you've known me for a few years. I'd love for you to ask me, do you think I'm qualified to be able to say that I'm a commercial space expert? You're not gonna like hire me to build an avionics package for a mission. But what has been your experience with me? You don't have to, you can be candid and honest. I know I can go on a few tangents. Maybe that's definitely a weak spot of mine.
Well, you're definitely in the top 3 people I know in terms of connections to anybody who matters in the industry. So, in my experience, yes, I would call you an expert member in the commercial sector of the space industry. And if we were ever building a rocket together, you could hold the light.
Well, thank you so much, Keegan. And I'm sorry I think there's someone outside my window who's decided to do some, it sounds like a tree trimming. I can't see. So if you hear some background noise for those on the YouTube session, please forgive there. We're just rolling and adapting. Let's go to some other fun questions. Let's just see. What are some of the challenges facing the space industry in the next 5-10 years? I think it's probably scalability and just making, there's lots of cool startups that are doing things that are, maybe onesies or twosies or something highly customized, which ends up sometimes looking a bit like old space, things that are highly customized. But I think it's showing that things are repeatable and scalable so that you can have true, commercial operations with it. I think that's probably something the space industry's got to think about. So maybe it's going to be, maybe people that are in like the testing might be, when you're testing hardware, you just can't, if you're building something that's a one-off, it might work fine. But if you want to make something that's on a production line, more of a, like what Elon Musk wants to do with SpaceX, with the Starship, he's thinking more about how do I do this? How do I first build a production line rather than just focusing on Starship? Although he is building Starship, he said he's adamant saying that the big challenge is going to be getting production going. So I think some of the challenges are going to be around scaling the operation. And let's say you're flying dozens, if not hundreds of Starships. Are there potential environmental issues in terms of if they're launching these, whether it's on land or offshore? There's probably going to be some environmental challenges and that they're going to have to try to mitigate and deal with. And I think, we'll adapt and we'll learn, and things won't be perfect. But the space industry, I think, wants to. I sense that when you talk to other professionals, people want this to be a sustainable and long-term enterprise. This is not just about, fueling the dreams of a few high net worth individuals. Keegan, what are some things that you feel that are some challenges over the next, 5 to 10 years? I'd call those very midterm.
Oh, that's a tough one. Next 5 to 10 years, I think it's going to the immediate challenge is going to be getting space companies to think very differently than what they're used to be able to build profit generating businesses. It's the comparison I keep coming back to is when the computer industry went from having floppy disks to CD drives. The problem was no longer, trying to cram as much as you possibly could into 64K worth of space. It was trying to figure out what the hell you were going to do to fill up, this massive new, tool you've got in your belt. And that's kind of this position the industry is stuck in, leading up to Starship. And, whenever we talk about, and I don't want to just talk about, Starship on this. What Blue Origin is doing is significant as well. But they're both aiming for the same thing, which is very high payload, low cost, reusable launch. And that changes everything about how you think about how to build a business in space. Because you're no longer, to make money, you no longer have to think about, well, I have to get every single nickel I can out of the stupidly expensive, satellite that's not much bigger than a microwave oven that I'm sending into space. How do I just keep reducing my costs and over-engineer it as much as possible? We've now got to start thinking in terms of, well, I can put, 10,000 of those things into orbit for the price that I could probably get if I went down to the bank and just got a loan. What are the use cases for a constellation that size, or rather, what are the new opportunities presented when constellations that size start flying? So there's going to be more of a administrative reorganization going on in the industry for how we approach the creation of new businesses and new projects. And that's just going to be a lot of mental roadblocks to get past, because you've got 70 plus years of industry culture that is basically going to be thrown out the window in the space of maybe a few years from now. So I think that's a big problem that almost nobody's talking about right now.
Got it. Thanks, Keegan. I think I'm going to look at, there was a few other questions I'm trying to see. Somebody talked about a recent college grad. I guess they maybe had some experience in commercial space, looking to connect to different career avenues. Well, there's lots of internship opportunities, but if they're looking for other ones, I mean, groups like Space Angels has a board called Space Talent. My friend Bernd Weiss in Europe, he's excellent at helping people around career transition and finding their place in the space sector. His company is, what is his company called? I'm trying to find, I think he has a URL called careercenter.space. And he's building a space career and entrepreneurship ecosystem. And so Bernd is doing good work there. And if you just go on Google and type in like space careers, space jobs, you can certainly find lots of job boards and other ways to potentially transition. But talk to some people. Maybe a guy like Bernd would be open to speaking to that person. And that's Bernd is BERND, and then WEISS is his last name. Let's see. This one I think we've already kind of discussed, but it says, why is space travel a relevant industry that's worth investing, requiring huge amounts of resources? I think we've kind of addressed most of this. It varies on the types of activities, and it's not actually so huge what even NASA spends. Let's just be generous and give them $25 billion budget, which is what they do not have. I think I think Keegan alluded to, our Department of Transportation can spend, several times that per year.
About $80 billion is what the DOT has.
We probably get a lot more of a long-term and or short-term return from NASA. And again, if you want to just go to all the returns, you just go back to using a computer right now. Look at Spinoffs, which is a publication from NASA, and you can see all the various technology spinoffs. It's just, they're so incredibly numerous. I mean, I think if we had to, again, I'll go through that list again: Earth observation, Earth resources management, space-based communications, space positioning, navigation, all the different economic opportunities related to space and non-space, inspiration, cooperation amongst political stuff, the spin-offs. It's just, and then if we just start going into the actual spin-offs and the technology, it's just so numerous. It's just, but there are enough resources on this planet to take care of all these things. It's just being, better allocation of these things, especially when we're talking about some of the other issues that people are so deeply concerned with. Let's find some other questions here. Isn't this just survivor's bias? There were many avenues of research that went nowhere. The question isn't whether there are benefits, whether there aren't more beneficial avenues to explore. You can always come back to space research. If you tackle global warming the other way around, might be more difficult. I think they actually work in parallel. And this is from Somkola. Survivor bias, concentrating on things that, interesting. People leading to false conclusions. Well, I think if we ignore the benefits from space and we just went cold turkey on space and we shut everything down, you'd probably have a new thinking about wanting to use space, because we need space every day, whether using banking transactions, getting from place to place. It's so invaluable. I think we actually need both. So I'm not sure about the survivor's bias part. Keegan, how do you feel about that? That if we're ignoring ignoring one issue to focus on the other. I think it's not either or. I think it's always that we do both in parallel.
It's never been either or. The issue is that, and I've talked to more than a few guys at NASA who would agree with this, is because NASA's agenda never quite feels like it's got a really hard direction. The perception is that it must be a waste of money, when that's an extremely reductive view of what they do in the first place. And as for what is being done in the private sector, it's a really weird thing to claim that it's not worth the expense, when folks like Planet Labs have developed a really solid product for being able to identify traffic flows, and it's going to sound trivial, but traffic flows in parking lots, to be able to identify the spread of forest fires. There's a lot of services that are provided by the space industry that we use every single day. Mm-hmm. I mean, the big one that I don't think any of us could competently function as human beings in society anymore is the GPS network, which was developed by the U.S. military. Robert, exactly how useless do you think you'd be if you were dropped into a city you were unfamiliar with today and did not have access to global positioning in any way, shape, or form? Because I'm pretty sure I suffer from directional insanity and would get lost on an elevator if left there long enough.
I have a decent sense of direction, but I certainly rely on my use of GPS. If I were in a completely unknown place without a good map, it would be difficult. And look, we still and our maps still sometimes change, and that's why it's nice having digital technology and satellites integrated, because we can have these dynamic systems. They're not static.
And let's not forget just how important those systems have also been in place to enabling humanitarian missions. When you're, if you're dropping resources off in an area that does not have a lot of infrastructure in the first place, being able to have an eye in the sky helps out immensely in all that. So I don't accept the claim that, investing money in space has not been a major benefit to people here on Earth. I think if anything, it's going to become a greater benefit as time goes on.
Yeah, and some of those areas we'll speak a little bit, save the next few being 5 to, let's just say, 20 years, meaning a generation. The large constellations we're going to see being developed for providing new internet access, new radar and observation capabilities, essentially being able to observe and monitor the Earth and communicate with the Earth essentially in real time, 24/7. New ways to manufacturing materials that would be difficult or if not impossible to make on Earth. And that would also maybe say materials, also things in the biotechnology area, not just maybe into building tools. Tourism, more humans experiencing the overview effect, which is that psychological paradigm shift in their, it's a cognitive shift that people experience from seeing the Earth from space. And I alluded earlier that Space VR is attempting a simulation of that by using a merging of flotation tanks and VR. One thing we didn't talk about today is asteroid impacts. There is about 20,000 of these that will eventually hit the Earth, about the size of the one that hit Russia 7 years ago. Don't ask me to pronounce the name, but it shattered roofs. It sent hundreds of people to the hospital. There are 1 million of those estimated larger than that one, which was about 60 feet, about 20-ish meters across, that cross Earth's orbit. And they think that there's about 20,000 of these that would expect to hit the Earth. So being able to monitor where those are and would be very beneficial. Could you imagine just one of those hitting anywhere where there are people, taking out an entire city or region? Would be, you can't even calculate those costs. We talked about some space-based solar power, maybe putting data centers at some point in space, maybe doing semiconductor manufacturing in space, mining of high-value elements, learning more how ecosystems work when we're building closed-loop ones, and that we can learn to live better here on Earth, and so that people are able to live comfortably and thrive in off Earth, whether they're in space on the habitat on the moon, Mars, or an asteroid, by developing those closed loop technology systems, ecosystems will probably get a lot of benefit also back on Earth. Oh gosh, also we're going to probably get better at just managing orbital debris, which is a pressing challenge. And there'll probably be certain things just in science that we're only going to be able to be done in space. I mean, it's just, that's kind of the little bit more long-term stuff, 5 to 20 years, but man, it's quite a list, right? Let's see, we're going to go down this list. What's your this is from someone that's Rochester, New York, 2020, or Rochester. I think they meant Rochester, New York, 2020. What's your take on the fact that Elon Musk, who's been wanting to move on Mars for years, has recently sold off all of his homes? Do you think a move to Mars is closer than we are being told? No, I just think that he's trying to consolidate his focus, that he's recognized that time is one of the most, if not the most valuable person that a Homo sapien has, and that he is just trying to focus more and more. I think he would love to say that we're getting closer to Mars. I think he thinks that we're not moving fast enough to being able to have, humans going to Mars, let alone having what he envisions as being a 1 million person city established on Mars. Would you probably give the same assessment, Keegan? Maybe Keegan might be muted, but that's okay. Keegan, you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Actually, I have to step away for a couple of minutes.
Oh, no worries.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
It was asking about the fact that Elon has he's selling his houses, and does that potentially mean that we're maybe closer to being able to go to Mars? And I just saying that I think I said he's consolidating his living situation so he can continue to focus further. He's realizing he doesn't have a lot of time.
Or he's divesting assets. I mean, someone with his amount of money selling homes is about if you're trying to read anything deeper into that, then by that logic, anybody with a net worth of close to his is gearing up to go to Mars. So no, I don't think that's a sign of anything.
Yeah, exactly. And then we talked about, from Guy D427, he asked about what the most viable commercial opportunities. We've touched on, I think, a lot of this earlier. I think we've mostly mentioned that, but Zipawa, I like that name, had answered. He mentioned some good stuff, artificial organs, silicon wafers, good stuff that could be developed in microgravity for Earth. And someone says, well, I'll be able to find work as an indentured servant on the Mars colony, or be stuck on Earth as it burns. I do not know. I think you should, turkey fisher, maybe I don't know what you're currently doing, but maybe find something else to potentially do. Life's not so terrible right now, and I don't think a Mars colony is happening this decade. So I would think about the present before worrying about becoming an indentured servant on Mars. Let's just see. Do you think if we wanted, we could start building a lunar base tomorrow? There was a group that came together regarding that. And excuse me, that question was from Final Design, I think, DZN, Final Design. That's how I'll pronounce it. There was a group that came together in Silicon Valley to look if that were possible. And I think they estimated the range between $5 and $9 billion. But I heard that it's probably on the closer to $9 billion. So it seems like from what I heard, it is possible, but we need to start actually going back there and doing things there. Keegan, if would you agree? We're probably not going to be able to build a base literally tomorrow, but once we start having operations going back to the moon, that a base is feasible. Okay, well, I will continue forward. We've talked about Mars stuff, and how can we push nations contributing to the cleanup? This is from RainMat. Yeah, so there's a few companies that are starting, or private efforts to look at orbital debris. Some are doing tracking, and some are trying to build hardware. But I haven't seen a good economic for-profit model yet for orbital debris. There's been people talked about like that you could have a little tiny tax buried in your cell phone bill or something else, or having the UN. But I'm not sure. I think maybe it's going to have to be individual countries. I'm not sure. I could see a group like the United Nations talking about it, but I don't think they're going to have any sort of. They don't have legislative power. Let's see. From the Right Master, what can be done to motivate private industries to start to look to the stars for profit? Well, they already are. So there's lots of companies. The space industry is a $400 billion dollar. That's a 400 US billion dollars of global industry, and so there's lots of players and peoples already involved. You know, I don't know if we can force the switch to happen, but I think some of these things are happening organically, and some of them, you know, some of the large companies like, you know, Boeing, Northrop Grumman, they're even doing some things in new ways because you have new entrants, basically new competitors, forcing them to adapt and evolve. With all your time, let me look at this one from Silly Silk. With all your time and effort spending achieving success, what are your thoughts about solving the horror that is the poverty and homelessness? Let's see here. Well, do you have any dreams of helping save the Earth? You know, the planet we live on. And yes, well, we're already doing that. A lot of the work that's being done, and I say the proverbial we, like through like what government and private space is doing, is already being helpful on Earth. And when you have technologies coming out for air purification, water purification, they truly do. It helps real people, humans on the Earth. I don't know if, you know, space directly helps someone who is maybe homeless today, but, you know, I think again, if we provide more low opportunities and lower cost energy, which might one day be potentially possible from Earth, we could then, when you have, especially if you're talking about low cost energy, you could bring many people out of poverty. Let's see. What benefits can we have of inhabiting Mars or living on the moon? This is from CodeCom. Well, just, you know, we'll be able to, if you're on the moon, first of all, you have a great place to view the Earth. I mean, imagine that backyard, and you have all the resources on the moon, and there's water, ice there. So, you know, there's great things to do to develop that lunar environment, because humanity, you know, we came from little single cell organisms. So we're always evolving and changing and taking over things, and it might not sound very comfortable to you, but we will be sort of taking over the solar system in some ways. You know, but I think it's for benevolent reasons. And also, you know, living off Earth can just be having humans, Homo sapiens, becoming Homo spacians will be benefit Earth, just in case things which can and will happen to Earth, we can have as a backup policy. And as we develop that technology to do things more in space, we will further it benefits society here on Earth in terms of that technology development. Bostwick Nader said, how many commercial spaceports are there? I actually don't know, and I haven't looked it up, but there are, I know there's Mojave Spaceport in the city of Mojave, California, in Southern California. You've got Spaceport America, just outside of Las Cruces, New Mexico. I know places like the state of Georgia, and many states are trying to build spaceports. And I guess the distinction is, he's asking about the distinction from a public sector spaceport. Well, they're actually kind of the same thing. You know, sometimes they're taking an existing airport and trying to add a license that they get from the FAA so they can do commercial operations there. And then essentially you could have private or companies come operate there at these public facilities. Purely 100% funded commercial ones, purely private, I don't know of any just yet. I think a lot of them are kind of public infrastructure that they want to essentially lease and rent out to commercial operations. Yes, I know of Kerbal. I've seen a lot of it. I think I've only played it once, but yeah, I know Kerbal Space Program. This is from the Heaven Stagehand. It's a great program. I think it was originally created out of Mexico, and great demonstration using real world physics for space. The Division 5. What aircraft have I built? 0. I've flown an aircraft. I've not built an aircraft. Nuaj 420. Who are your favorite rich people? I don't really have any favorite rich people. I have favorite people, but not necessarily favorite rich people. Dragonair Reborn. What's your favorite dinosaur? Oh gosh. I mean, which one? I'm forgetting the name of the one that flies. They used to, it's one of the flying dinosaurs used to always find fascinating. I mean, the T-Rex is freaking really cool. What is the name? I can't remember. What is the name of the dinosaur that flies?
Pterodactyl.
That's it. Thank you. That was my wife. The pterodactyl. Yeah. I think they're awesome. I've got kids. Okay, this is next from Cram Duck. I've got kids ages 7 and 9. What kind of skills will be most in demand? Well, I would say I think they're going to need all sorts of creative problem-solving skills. Maybe they might have many different jobs over their career. So I think making sure they have activities that they can do that they really enjoy, that touch on a lot of disciplines. It doesn't have to be things that are specifically space interest. If they love dealing with plants and botany and gardening, I think that's cool. And they love math and music. I think you should be able to develop all of those skills. And then as they mature and grow, they can see if and where they could place themselves in the space industry. Hope that helps. This is from Killsmaster. Can you elaborate about attending ISU? What I'd done before. So ISU was started by 3 individuals, and one of them including Peter Diamandis. And they wanted to create a space-focused educational institution. And the school is based in, I think it's Strasbourg, France. And they have a campus there, and they have essentially graduate level schooling there. But they also do these satellite campuses, and I participated in one called the SSP, and I did it in Haifa, Israel, at the Technion Institute. And in terms of what I'd done before, we had to apply, so I was already involved in the space sector, but there were definitely a lot of things that were kind of like gaps in my knowledge, astrophysics and cosmology and different areas like that, and policy areas. So the SSP is this very intense summer program, and they have them in the northern and summer hemisphere. And they cram a ton of information down you in a short period of time. And then you also work on a team project, which is a very intense period where you're working with people from around the world. So they have these things called like the 3 I's, things that are interdisciplinary. At ISU, they want to be intercultural, interdisciplinary. I feel like I'm forgetting the last one, but essentially it's this really rich experience, amazing experience where you're there with people from around the world, other professionals, some who have maybe dedicated day careers in space, some who maybe don't, but they aspire to, and they are, and you get to spend essentially about 10 weeks with them, working incredibly closely with them, learning in this totally focused environment. It was really amazing, and they just had an online version of the SSP, which apparently went pretty well. I'd encourage you to learn more about ISU. Essentially, it's graduate level education. Let's just see. This is from Metch Mine. There was a satellite that opened up and released an additional satellite recently, like out of James Bond. Can't remember what country it's from, but it seems like my question is, what are you doing to protect yourself from attack? Well, space debris. Space debris. Anything that's moving in space could potentially be a kinetic weapon because it moves. It could run into something else, collide with something else, and creating space debris. And many times when they are launching a rocket, they have this thing called the fairing, which is at the top, and it protects the satellite. Sometimes it opens, and the satellite comes out. So I'm not doing anything myself to protect myself from attack. I don't think we need to worry about it. But there are, we do have, countries do local policing, making sure that their own companies that are launching to space are good actors and putting satellites that are able to either decay and burn up, or when they run out of fuel, get low on fuel, or get to the end of their life, they take them to a graveyard orbit so they don't cause interference. But I do, maybe weaponization of space, it's possible. I hope it doesn't happen. I'm gonna, let's see, EB041. Hello and congratulations. And Craig, so this person's got he's a college graduate with an economics degree. Well, there's lots of ways you could be an analyst. You could join a business investment firm and start looking at aerospace. You could join a space company. There's depending on the size and the focus of the company, there are plenty that would take someone like you. But think about things like maybe analyst type of positions or other things that might just pique your interest. Someone from Black Paratrooper, I'm a construction project manager. What is the best way to prepare myself for hands-on role in the space industry? Well, I don't know where you're physically located. See if there's any, maybe maker spaces or hacker spaces in your area. That might be an interesting way to start a space project. Maybe there is a good way to maybe start is maybe at a local maker space. We could find a few other people might want to work on a space project, and you could do something like do a small satellite project. There are these kind of projects that were called, or there was a satellite form factor called the CubeSat, and they were initially made for academia. They were like small little boxes, little satellites, and they weren't expected to fly. And now there's a whole industry where people are using this form factor, these cube satellites, because they were done in increments of essentially, I think, 10 centimeters. And these cube satellites are now flying in space, and you can build one and you can get one sent to space. So if I'm just thinking out of the box here just a little bit, find some other people who want to do something, maybe somebody who's got some electrical skills or some other people, maybe you could, work together on a CubeSat project. There's even smaller satellites. My friend, Sean Whitehead, he runs a group called Scout Tech Limited out of the UK and Creationeer. And he's developing something called the ThumbSat, which is a matchbox-sized satellite. You could perhaps leverage something like that and start just learning, just jumping on a space project there. Let's see, Crimbley_B. How do you think biotech, particularly synthetic and systems biology, will factor in space exploration? I think it's going to be very crucial, especially if we're going to have to take or grow our food in space, or potentially re-engineer humans to better withstand some of the rigors of long-term space travel, microgravity, radiation. That's why I personally am more of a fan of artificial gravity. I think when it comes to commercial market, I think we'll see some of the uses of some of these things being developed in space back on Earth, probably first before humans in space, but it could happen in parallel. Let's see here. Okay, this is from 276138661. This is, yes, I think it's going to be a big issue. And I think that space ultimately can help create additional wealth for not just a few, but for many people on Earth through the new applications, the new solutions. There's going to be such amazing value that it's that it really is worth a few individuals investing mostly some of their own capital and some investors' capital to do these really high-risk projects. I think it is potentially limitless, that there's opportunities. The solar system is not completely limitless. It does have its limits. We have, there's only so much Pluto, there's only so much of our moon. So I do think that we need to make sure we plan the smart use of the resources so we could sustainably use it. Let's see. Alan Miniati. What's the role of space policy and law in the new age of space exploration extraction? Well, there's space lobbyists, there's lots of space lawyers, there's lots of blogs and commentary on this. There's no shortage of debate. Space geeks and space professionals love to get into space policy debate and argument. So I would suggest, if you want to know more about it, space's role. Go research it out, because space is a highly regulated and contested environment. So although there are certain areas that are somewhat self-regulating, it's still highly regulated, and so there is domestic and international law around. Let's see, from Gerald_Robert, what would you say is the number one obstacle involved same way commercial space travel? Well, it's already kind of happening, so it's not an obstacle. It's just time. Some of these things just take more time. Then this is Trace Playroom. There's alarming trend of space companies revealing themselves to be incapable of actually building working hardware. What are the factors that have caused this trend? Help you correct, and who positions to capitalize this? Okay, they're talking about some big delays. Well, delays are normal in large hardware programs. So I guess it depends on who's funding them. New Glenn is financed by Jeff Bezos. Vulcan is funded by United Launch Alliance. SLS is there's multiple government contractors to sell this for NASA's use. I personally believe that I think it's become a big jobs program. I don't think it's ever really going to be a viable system. And I think we would be better off to try to find a transition for the employees, contractors, and companies related to SLS. There might be some short-term pinch, but transition that project and the people working on it to other things and wind that down, because we're not being honest, that's basically a jobs program, and it's being protected because of political interests. Let's see, Ham 006. Which is more important, spending resources on eliminating world hunger now or spending resources on Earth exploration? I've talked about this multiple times. We do all of it because we invest in space because it solves our problems here on Earth. And there's all sorts of space research being done that helpful for agricultural and food. So we need both, and the money that we spend in space is actually spent on Earth. My top 5 rockets and why? Well, Saturn V, because I think as a kid that thing looked awesome. Then the space shuttle. Then probably Falcon Heavy, because I had payload that flew on it, which is pretty freaking awesome. Well, the group I worked with for Arc Mission Foundation. I think Falcon 9 is amazing. I think it kind of covers it. And I would have loved to have seen X-Core Lynx fly, but that was not completed. Why should I trust private companies to do space exploration as opposed to governments? Well, you don't have to trust them. They're already kind of doing things. There's a commercial company that's going to be one of the first deep space exploration companies called Explore. It's led by my friend, led by Lisa and Jeff Rich. Private companies can work in parallel, work for and with government to take off some of the things that they can't fully do. So lower Earth orbit's a great example. We still have government activity there, but now we've got private companies that are going to start basically doing the truck driving, carrying logistics, supplies, and people to lower Earth orbit. And slowly over time, that'll continue to happen as we press further out into the solar system. We can do both. I think private and public can work fine together. From Oisin Reynolds, how does one in Ireland go about getting the space-related field? Do you have to be good in math? Well, being good in math helps, but you don't have to be. And I do have a few friends in Ireland who are in the space program, working in space sector. So gosh, I would look up, maybe go, let me think. International Space University had a recent program at Cork, Ireland. I would look, I think it was, I don't know, maybe it's University of Cork, but I would look up the school, see, ask them, just ask them about what programs they have related to space. I know they have, I think, a good, strong astronomy program. And take a look on Google under maybe Irish astronaut, Irish new space. I would do search in that, and you'll find a few people who are doing kind of space-related stuff in Ireland. So one person who I know is Dr. Nora Patton. You could look her up. She wants to be, I think, Ireland's first astronaut. So check her out. Let's see. Are there opportunities for space electricians? Yes, nay. Well, there's not necessarily specifically just pure electrical work right now on space. They need people on the space station doing a wide variety of activities, but they do need electricians in the space program. And I talked a lot about this earlier on the AMA. So Pauda talks about IP. Do we need IP law changes? So I do write a little bit about IP, and there are a lot of companies that will use trade secrets instead of patents, because they don't want anybody to see what they're working on. So, but even if you have trade secrets, I think the bigger concern, rather than just IP, it's cyber security and all the soft espionage that happens in terms of stealing IP. So, and I know that sometimes government agencies, or if you're working for government, you can have contractual limits on IP. So there probably could be some innovation that could happen there. I'm not an IP expert, but I think maybe there could be some changes around there. Let's see. Pan Poticano one. Oh, this person thinks I'm a fraud or a con man or a huge pile of, I'll just say shit, because it's fun on this AMA. We're trying to monetize that 99.9 have no access to. Well, okay. Oh gosh, I'm a cockless pig. This is kind of a fun one. So, you use space every day. You should just look up Google a day without a satellite or a day without space. And then let's just see how we would all be benefiting. We all have access to space. We do it every day. You go up to the sky and, at night you look at the stars, and then you start to think of all the tools and accessibility in terms of mapping and weather forecasting and all the advanced technology that we've been gaining for many decades. So I'm probably not giving you a satisfying answer, but I'm really not trying to exploit any type of person. Let's see, Pope Gonzo, who has an 11-year-old. That's awesome. And they're excited about the idea of interplanetary domination. Wow. I guess they're a science fi fan. What are the options for power on the moon? Well, there's some solar, but it's probably going to be nuclear power. That's where a lot of that's probably where we're going to see it, people bringing nuclear reactors to the moon. And we have, and there'll be plenty shielding, and they will be relatively low cost and easy to use for robots and humans that might be there. Let's see. From Rage 1391. I'm a 26-year-old non-American scuba diving instructor. I don't know about this. Something I can do to achieve that regarding astronaut training. Well, there is private astronaut training that you can definitely do. You don't have to be an American, and you'll definitely have an opportunity to do that. I know that there's talk about building a large water, like a pool, basically, for space simulations in the United Kingdom. I don't know how you would get into that. There's a facility down in Florida called NEMO. You could look at how you could apply to work in one of those programs. I would look up NEMO and start researching there. There's probably ways you could maybe start as a support technician, maybe work your way through, depending on your experience, to maybe being a support diver. But you'd have to research that a little further. Oh, a geologist this is coming from What's an Internet? Well, I think geologists, there's a lot of geology papers on how our solar system is composed of. And I imagine in a few years, there will be more companies that will want geologists for help on things like, assessing our moon and maybe Mars and the asteroids. Let's see here. And I want to take a pause for a moment for some water. So I'm almost out, but I think my wife brought me some juice, so going through these fairly rapidly. Some of these will probably have to be transcribed too. Let's see. So hang in there with me, Team Reddit. It's been super fun talking to you all for a moment. I'm going to just check in here. I've got someone just checking in here. Let's see what's going on here. I'm going to continue forward. Hopefully we're going to have some of these answers, or most of these answers, at least portions of this transcribed. Let's see. Okay. This is from Dirty Internet Plebeian. Serious question for the ignorant me. Are we really doing anything commercial space besides setting up satellites and some limited zero-G research? Certainly. I mean, we've got, as we discussed earlier, we're talking about doing fuel depots, refueling of satellites, manufacturing in space, building space station. I mean, Axiom is currently doing that. It's a lot of serious stuff happening. This is from Mare Manu, I think. Do you think private industry is contributing to a derailing of more NASA grand plans? Wait, I'm not quite sure I understand. Putting aside the impact of decreasing budget allocations. I'm not sure I understand your question, but I think the current administration is still very pro-space. And I think if there's any new administrations, I think it'll basically probably remain the status quo because NASA is doing a pretty good job right now. And I think the current administrator is excellent, Jim Bridenstine. I have my minor gripe about SLS, but I think overall the administrator is doing a good job. Dutch Midget, is asteroid mining economically feasible? We answered that, yes, one day. Thyme and Patience, how can we as people with little influence on space operations capitalize? Well, first of all, to start reading about it and then thinking about where your personal and professional passions are, and just start trying to mirror up or match. Could I do something like this with space? Think about it, even if it's just like a digital or web or media project. It doesn't even have to be literally space. Space is an enabler, not just for activity up in space, but it enables all sorts of creative opportunities too. Look, some of our top films are space related. Whether you're thinking about The Martian, Gravity, 2001, Star Wars, Star Trek. Let's see. From Whiplash. How will the space industry affect video production workflows and technology? I don't really know. I mean, I guess we might just get more video from space. You're talking about potentially having people film in space, doing VR experiences where they're on Earth, but it's footage taken from space. That's happening. So I don't really know. I don't think about that too much, but I certainly think there'll be a lot of video production more happening in space. I think Tom Cruise intends to make a movie on the space station in space. Let's see. This is a long one. Let's see, from Saturday Night Wrist. I think they're worried about just exploitation of humans and stuff. And, again, we've kind of talked about some of this and feudal systems. And I think we're in a transitionary period where we have governments and high net worth individuals funding this new area. It's pioneering, opening a new frontier. I think it's going to continue. I think it's going to bring in millions of more people. It's going to create more jobs, more economic opportunity. It's going to bring opportunities for more people to come out of poverty. I think we will potentially see new legal and new organizational and new governmental structures one day in space. We might even see some of the blockchain people get more involved. You've got groups like Space Chain that want to build these. They want to build experiments where you can buy into their ecosystem so you can have access to their satellites. I think that's nascent activities. So I think I'm all for Team Human, and I think we continue to try to be proactive and create a positive future So we can, and that includes space. So just trying to be positive. Yeah, there might be some people that'll do some dick things, but hopefully there's not as many of them. Rivet22, how do I get a job? He's a project manager. Well, go look on some of the job board sites that are dedicated to space, like I think Space Talents, and you just go to your search engine and type in for space jobs and careers. You'll see tons of jobs, and not all of them require security clearance, but many in the US do require at least a green card. From CP Profit, what's the next hub, Moon or Mars? Well, I think Moon more likely be our next hub, but Moon is like our training ground for Mars. We do both. We kind of explore Mars, we develop Moon. So it's a little bit of both, but Moon first. Happiness Engineering. What do you believe is the lowest hanging fruit in terms of the commercial viability of space? Let me repeat the question. What do you believe is the lowest hanging fruit in terms of the commercial viability of space economics? Well, I think it's going to be the products and applications derived from space. Initially, right now, what's already happening is data. Those are the satellites that are generating information, and they're people that are essentially leveraging all that data that is generated from whether it's a remote sensing satellite, a weather satellite, whether they're essentially bits. They're measuring energy from the Earth, and they're detecting some type of change. And then someone's creating software to create some analytics on that. That's a part of the lowest hanging fruit, I think. So that's kind of somewhere between software and analytics leveraging satellites. And then I think the next area is going to be the products that are going to start coming out, technology from microgravity research in bio and manufacturing areas. Let's see. I think I'm just getting a little bit tired here. So that's just from going through these. So if some of these been shorter, please forgive in my answers. And Happiness Engineering is also asking again about precious minerals are abundant on asteroids. Would mining them collapse their prices on Earth, thereby making their endeavor less economically attractive? I've thought about that, and I've done some reading on that. And yeah, if you had asteroid and you have all this platinum, you bring it back to Earth, wouldn't it potentially just crash the price? I guess it could, but it's unlikely early on you're going to just see that, because it's going to be technically difficult just to bring the asteroid back. So I don't think you're initially going to see. I think it's going to be like mining for use in Earth. But as it gets more challenging to mine certain resources on Earth, they're now talking about mining on the bottom of the ocean, which has me concerned. We might look to space for some of these things, which might be actually in some ways easier and more advantageous because we don't have to ruin our planet for them. We already talked about book, film, TV series stuff, although a book I love and actually have a copy here that I recently read not too long ago is Delta V. It's by Daniel Suarez. Awesome book. And it's kind of it's like a near-term science fiction book and deals a lot with asteroid mining. Highly recommend it. Another amazing book, since I have some books here, is The Cosma Hypothesis by Frank White, who wrote The Overview Effect. Amazing stuff, really changed my thinking. Book I read a while ago, but still excellent and timely, is The Genius of the Beast. The Genius of the Beast by Howard Bloom. Current book I'm kind of meandering my way through is Thinking in Systems by Donella H. Meadows. Another book, I think I quoted this book in my book, and it's a fantastic book, is Sapiens. Another book that's that's not really space related at all, but it is a great book, is A Planet of 3 Billion, talking about population challenges. And it's really, really worthwhile. So I love science fiction, but I haven't really been reading a lot of science fiction lately because I just haven't had time. Not as much of a priority. Let's see. What do you think are the biggest challenges that entrepreneurs will have to overcome in the space industry? We talked about that one. If the true Lord Humongous wanted to put a colony on the Moon or Mars, would there be legitimate legal standing to stopping me? Probably not. Assuming you got a launch license, yeah, you could go to the moon and do things there. It just depends on some of the activities there. You know, let's see. From Pliok, lawyer here, do you see demand for legal services? Yes, there's already space attorneys. There's space law, contract law, all that type of stuff applies for space. And there's, you know, we have the telecom sector heavily needed space experts because they were using, the telecom sector had satellites for TV, radio, telephony. So yeah, it's important. Let's see. I'm looking to get in the scientific field. What's the best approach? How did you get in this field? Well, for me, it was sort of an organic approach because I basically went to the very first Spaceship One launch and I said, I'm going to get in this sector. So if you're not yet studying something, start studying something that maybe seems interesting, physics or chemistry or biology, really basic, and go from there. And then you can do, do some internships maybe related to space companies, or you can go back and do an ISU program and complement that. This is from I Am Not Awake. What is your vision of commercial space? How will it be utilized to get their Amazon packages delivered to the ISS? Well, my vision, as I shared earlier, would be a sustainably populated planet of Earth that we take care of, that we have our dirty infrastructure and manufacturing taken off world, and that there are billions of humans living comfortably and happy and prospering in the solar system. So Avarice Unbound wants to know about overcoming challenges and STEM students just starting out, finding resources to work with, being tenacious and persistent. If there's a problem, just keep at it. And if something really, you feel like you hit a wall, maybe put it down, go do something else and come back to it, whether it's a day later or a week later or even a year later. I think just being persistent, just keep moving, just moving forward. It's small. It's about small steps. It's not like one day somebody woke up and they were gigantically successful. Nobody's an overnight sensation. From Cell Reborn, how far are we from becoming affordable for the average person to visit space? We've talked about that. I think if Elon can go a little bit quicker, maybe 20 years or something, maybe. We already talked about from 134282 about some of the impact of asteroid mining. From Tim AA 2017, the next space station, one that's in development. I think the Chinese have one in development. You could look probably on Google for photos, and then also look up Axiom Space. It's AXIOM. It will not have artificial gravity. I wish someone would think about doing an artificial gravity one, but it's not happening just yet. From Baby Bear 552. Let me just pause for a moment. I have a little more. Take a little more juice. Fresh squeezed juice my wife made for me. I haven't done a bathroom break for this. Let's see. Baby Bear 552. So we're going to space, but we need what fundamental changes do we need to make as a society to ensure the bad parts of our current system are left on Earth? Yes, exactly. How can we ensure a better future once we're in space to avoid all these dystopian future we see in the movies? I couldn't agree more. I think we have to just start thinking and behaving individually for ourselves on just trying to be better people, be better listeners, be more empathetic. And then that will hopefully attract other people to maybe behave more like that maybe aren't currently. So I think it just starts with us as an individual and thinking and doing things very locally. And when it comes to just trying to make huge societal change, you can participate in, there's advocacy organizations. You could start your own. You can use this powerful thing called the internet to get your message out there. But many other space professionals, space advocates are deeply concerned about, making sure that we don't take all of our poor behavior, because I don't even know if we're teenagers still as a civilization. Maybe we're toddlers having a really awful day. We can definitely improve, and we need more fresh ideas and reinvigorating other classical ideas that maybe didn't get a fair chance, and maybe mashing them up. So I hear you. Let's see. What movies did I like? I like all sorts of movies. I remember seeing Star Wars as a kid. It's more of a fantasy film, but I love both the Star Wars and Star Trek franchises. I don't really enjoy as much. Some of the current Star Wars stuff is a little bit don't really enjoy it as much, but I really, I enjoyed Interstellar, and I enjoyed The Martian, and this person's Skio Yours is asking me if movies impact your decision making a book. Not really. No. And then liked keypad. How will the role of American defense contractors change? Will they be surpassed by commercial? Well, they're slow moving, and I think they're kind of here to stay for now. They could be surpassed by commercial, but it's difficult to say. These are large companies, and they've got political interests, financial interests. I think they're still going to be part of that current ecosystem for while I'm alive. Here's someone from Folky. He's graduating with a degree in computer science, more interest in space. Well, I talked about this a little earlier, but essentially, there is plenty of room for software developers in space. So you can go back and listen to this earlier. I answered this question. From Quasi Robo, will we ever recreate the Red Room in outer space? I actually don't really know the Red Room in outer space. I don't know. Acorn Stew, what do Space Angels look for in space-focused startup? I currently do not work for Space Angels, so you'd have to check their site. But if I'm looking at opportunities, I want to know what the team looks like. Have they worked together? Whether or not, even if maybe maybe they've worked together, maybe they had a failure in the past, but maybe it's important to understand who the team is and their assessment of the market. Who is the customer? Do they really know who's the customer? So many times you see things that look good on paper, or they've got this amazing PowerPoint, or something really cool. It looks like a cool science project, but there's no user, no customer base. I think doing customer development is super important. Amazing Bull Weevil. I think I've bookmarked. I think I have on a list somewhere the Third Industrial Revolution. I've never read it, but I think I actually did have on one of my book reading lists at some point. Maybe I should actually check it out. Cooperate. I think we answered your question. Already answered that question. Strange Captain. Any chance of the majority of people to properly price the effects on corporate operations under shared resources spaces? Yeah, I've kind of thought about this a little bit. I thought about there's this thing called the oil fund out of Alaska, where all the citizens get to share on some of the dividends from it. And I kind of wondered if there could be some type of way that would still incentivize private industry entrepreneurs and investors to invest in the resources in space, and also share distributions or dividends to the rest of the Earth. And there's pros and cons, and I don't really know, but I think we could definitely think about it. I could imagine systems where you have these blockchain ledger systems where potentially could allow more stakeholders to have more benefits. MCS Monkeys, when are we going to meet the aliens? We might be the aliens. I don't know. And then this Pumperpo, well, they can read about defecation in space. There's plenty of discussion about that. So I think, unless I'm going to check, it's like 12:04. Let's see, we might have I think this might be it. Let's just see, lawyer here. Yeah, we actually talked about. We've actually sort of talked about some of the legal stuff. I'm seeing. Let's just see. I'm going to take last gander here. Okay. Okay, let's see. I think we're mostly done. So friends, for those who've stuck around just a few minutes over, thank you so much. I appreciate it. I just want to, humbly share, I appreciate your time and spending it with me on this Friday, September 11th, to talk about different topics around space. Again, my name is Robert Jacobson. It was a pleasure and a real honor to be able to spend time here on this AMA Reddit today. A few of you had alluded to and asked some questions. I did write a book. Was not trying to make it any type of plug. I just wanted to go through and answer some questions. This is, I will only say about just, it's what it looks like. And for those who are interested, you can find me about it. But I do appreciate everyone's participation, and we'll see what other ones which we didn't catch we can try to continue to take care of. Thank you again. Again, my name is Robert Jacobson, and I'm a commercial space expert. Thank you very much, and I look forward to connecting with you in the future. Have a successful weekend.